The Button Thief of East 14th Street, Chapter 18, The Candy Store Across the Street. My mother's two younger brothers, Zalman the junk dealer and Max the milkman, bought a foreclosed farm in the mountains for a song. The bank needed to get rid of it. They planned to collect junk, buy into a milk delivery route, and grow vegetables while their wives raised the children and tended the chicken coops and rented out rooms to summer people. Zalman's wife, Anna, stolid and silent, was from the old country and was used to hard work. Aunt Eva, Max's wife, was a city girl who dressed in style and liked a good time. With tears in her eyes, she gave her fur coat to my mother, a 3/4 length monkey fur that my mother's oldest brother, Shmafaivel, had bought her years before as an extra wedding present. The coat, with its long black silky strands that swayed as you walked, looked ridiculous on my stumpy little mama, and she had to keep sewing the skins together, and the lining was in shreds, but she wore it gratefully against the winter cold. Some crabby neighbor, probably a Republican, snitched to the Home Relief Bureau. An investigator rang the bell. "We have a report that you bought a fur coat recently while you were receiving money from the state of New York as a needy family. Will you please allow me to see your clothes closet?" My mother walked her to the girl's bedroom, took the monkey fur off the pile of coats on the sewing machine, and threw it at her feet. "Here, I give you this schmata for a present. Let me see you wear it." And that's how we were thrown off Home Relief and lost $7 a week. We couldn't make out without the $7. It wasn't even enough. My father's garment factory got shut down in the Depression. His part-time job as a janitor at Lavenberg Homes didn't bring in a dime. It was for working off the rent. For a little extra money on the side, my mother bought toy American flags from the Betty Boop store on Ludlow Street, and my father sold them at parades. He took Sidney to sit up on his shoulders and waved 2 flags above the crowd. And my mother took me to sell peanuts with her at the Statue of Liberty in Battery Park. She kept the peanuts hidden in 2 leather shopping bags, and I sold them from my own wicker basket. I wore Mama's big shawl from Russia so I could cover the basket when cops came by because we didn't have a license to peddle. But we could only sell flags and peanuts on weekends and holidays, and only in good weather. The rest of the time, we had just the Home Relief money and a little rush work my father sometimes picked up from his friend Mr. Toperick, who made the leather shopping bags. "What I need now," Mama said, "is a regular full-time job. Only Faggy is in the way." I was 6 years old, in 1st grade, when my mother threw the monkey fur at the Home Relief investigator. Before Mama could go look for a full-time job, she had to find someone to take care of me when I came home from school. My brother Sidney, age 7, went straight from school to the Jewish Center on Stanton Street and Essex, where he studied for his bar mitzvah, which would make him a man at age 13. My sister Ruthie, already 13, had after-school activities with her friends, and Mama wouldn't let her give up her life to stay home with me. 15-year-old Maxie went his own mysterious ways. We never saw him before supper. My father dressed and left home every morning as if he was going to work, even while he was a janitor. Ma said he sat all day in the coffee houses with friends. He never came back home before supper either. I said, "Mama, I can be home by myself. Just give me a key and I'll go right home and stay in my bedroom, I promise." "Remember what happened to your friend Phyllis when she wore a key from her neck? Remember how she got 104 degrees fever and almost died from pneumonia till somebody came home?" I remembered that time. I was in the vigil under her window when Dr. Steinmetz stepped out of the building with his satchel and said the crisis was over. And remember down Garrick Street, the 4 Italian girls what got burnt up from playing with matches? I remembered that also. Their bodies were found under the bed, piled up together. My gang got online to see them in their coffins in the window of the Grand Street Funeral Home. Their faces were made of wax, with painted-on eyebrows and shiny red lips. It was in the Daily News front page. The mother had just run out to the store for a second, and she got all the blame. They said she wanted to kill herself, except she was Catholic and it wasn't allowed. I said, so let me play outside. When it rains, I can sit on the steps in the hall. My friends do it. She said, leave the stupid mothers to take a chance with their young ones. Who knows what can happen next? A full-time job came up suddenly through my mother's second oldest brother, Al-Yalaib, a trembly mouse whose name means lion in Hebrew and lion in Yiddish. He had been dressed as a girl in Russia to escape service in the Tsar's army, but he was found out and drafted anyway, with that miserable exception from which he barely escaped in one piece. Al-Yalaib's only job in his life was as house painter's helper to their eldest brother, Shmefayvel. But now there wasn't enough work for the two of them, so Shmefayvel let him go. Shmefayvel, who lived in expensive Washington Heights and whose son was studying to be a lawyer, fired his own brother, who had a wife to support and 2 growing children. Nobody dared to tell my grandmother. While Mama brought a big jar of chicken and soup to his wife Paula and showed her how to apply for home relief, Al-Yalaib went to 14th Street and starting at Avenue D and going blindly from store to store on both sides of the street for more than 7 long avenues, by some miracle, found a job, all by himself, in the automat just before Union Square, clearing dishes off the tables onto trays and placing the trays onto the dumbwaiters. He was there less than a week when just at supper time, he rang our bell like a fire alarm, making us all jump and run to pick up the newspapers covering the floor. But before we could hide them, he burst into the kitchen quivering with excitement. He had found a job for my mother where he worked. A second miracle. The job was in the basement, taking the trays off the automat's dumbwaiters, scraping off the garbage, and stacking up the dishes for the dishwasher men. The woman who had been doing it had an accident, and she was taken away by ambulance. In the midst of that commotion, Al-Yalaib, who could barely speak a dozen words of English, had found the courage to step up to the boss and recommend my mother. In the morning, my mother went with me to Mr. Seltzer's candy store across the street to ask if just this once would he please let me stay in the store after school until she got home. He said, sure, I could sit at the table in the back. She paid for a double scoop chocolate malted. She made me promise to go straight from school to the candy store and stay in the back out of the way of customers and drink up the whole malted until she came for me. At 3 o'clock, I squeezed past the crowd of boys in the front part of the candy store, and I sat down at the table with my pencil box. The tabletop was white porcelain with blue checked triangles in the corners, just like the table we had at home. Beyond the table was the pinball machine, and after that was the telephone booth, and then the back room started. Across the narrow aisle from where I sat was the mahogany and glass case, where I could look as long as I wanted at the beautiful women and the noble men on the cigar boxes, at the celluloid Cupid dolls, at the rubber balls, the yo-yos, high-low paddle sets, marbles, jacks, jump ropes, pickup sticks, chalk, and an opened box of balloons in all colors. After 3 o'clock, the crowd came and emptied out, and the store was quiet. Mr. Seltzer brought me my malted. He poured it from the polished steel mixer into the 2 tall glasses, and he set down 2 straws. While I was struggling to drink it all, Nellie, old Mrs. Heinbach's Irish setter dog, came by herself, carrying a change purse in her teeth. Mr. Seltzer took the purse and gave her a rolled-up Daily Mirror in its place. She held the newspaper daintily between her teeth and went back out. All my life I had seen Nellie tiptoeing along the street from the corner building with a change purse in her mouth and coming back with a newspaper in her mouth. This was the first time I saw how the trick worked. Mr. Seltzer looked at me. "Do you go to the grocery store for your mother?" I said yes. It was a few doors away. "Then do me a favor and take this pocketbook over there. It has an order for Mrs. Heinbach." I skipped out with Nellie's change purse and watched as the grocer filled a brown paper bag with the order. He took money from the purse, dropped the purse into the paper bag, and his delivery boy took the bag and left the store, Nellie following with the newspaper still in her mouth back to Mrs. Heinbach's corner building. So then I learned the whole trick. When I finally finished my malted, Mr. Seltzer took the 2 glasses away and brought over a Shirley Temple coloring book with a torn cover. He told me to keep it. I spent the next while coloring with the 6 crayons from my pencil box. Sometimes the store was empty, and sometimes customers came in all the way up to my table. In my part of the store, only a few grown-up men went past me to the back room, and only a few boys clumped around the pinball machine. The telephone rang. A man from the back room answered it. He called out to the boys at the pinball machine, "Who wants to get Rosie Harris, F32? The letter F was the name of a Lavenberg building, and the number 32 meant the 3rd floor, 2nd door. The 2 youngest boys jostled each other. The man chose one and told the other, "You'll go next." Miss Harris came running to the phone without a coat, her hair in curlers. "You only got 5 minutes," and then the nickel was up and the caller had to deposit another nickel. I could see through the glass door of the telephone booth. I could see her twisting her shoulders and making all kinds of facial expressions while she talked into the speaker, so I knew it was a date. When she hung up, she gave the boy a tip. I had to go to the toilet. I raised my hand like I had learned to do in school until Mr. Seltzer noticed me. "May I please leave the room?" He said, "Go in the back, it's after the sink." In the back room, the men were playing cards. They were tossing pennies in the kitty to start a round of poker. One guy watched with his chair turned backwards, his chin on his folded arms. Another guy was leaning against a wall of soda cases. I had to squeeze past between them. I said, "Please excuse me." The man against the soda cases said to the man in the chair, "You hear the kid? Why don't you ever excuse yourself, eh?" When I came out of the toilet, the first man was in the game. He called out, "Come here, kid, sit next to me and bring me luck." He showed me his hand. no matching pairs, no high cards. But instead of folding the hand, he kept the 3 diamonds and discarded 2 cards. He drew 2 more diamonds for a flush and won the pot. He said, "Hey, kid, you really brought me luck." And he slid 2 pennies in front of me with his fingertips. I scooped them into my coat pocket. His name was Babe. Every time Babe won, he slid some pennies in front of me. Then the other winners got into the spirit and slid pennies my way too. Sometimes the pot was big and I got a nickel. When my mother came for me, Mr. Seltzer said I was no trouble at all. I could stay in the store after school every day if she wanted. She paid for the next day's double scoop chocolate malted, and he put the Shirley Temple coloring book behind the counter for next time. Upstairs, I told my mother about the back room, and I showed her both of my coat pockets stuffed with coins. "Ay, ay," she laughed, "a clig a cup, a clever head. From my mother's iron milk I made a girl with an iron head." She knocked on my head as if to knock on wood, for good luck. And then she said, "Kanahara," and pretend spit at me 3 times, "Toot, toot, toot," to make me seem worthless so as not to attract the evil eye of envy. "Keep the money for yourself," she said. "Save up for your own expenses. That will be the biggest help." Then she gave me a tin Sweetutchny tea treasure box and said to keep it in the dresser drawer behind the underwear. She said, "Don't tell nobody you make tips. Nobody needs to know your business." Then she said, "Listen to me. Don't spend any of this money in the store. Mr. Seltzer also don't want to know." Next day in the candy store, Babe and Sugar, the guy who had been leaning against the soda cases, were the only ones in the back room. Sugar said, "Hey, kid, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to teach you solitaire. Once you know solitaire, you don't need to wait for nobody to come along. You can play by yourself. You see? If he teaches you," Babe said, "you're going to lose, guaranteed. Sugar is the biggest loser. You should have seen him last night." "What are you yapping about?" Sugar said. "If I didn't lose last night, you wouldn't have a dime today." The telephone rang. Babe looked up at the clock. There were phone calls at certain times that he wanted to answer himself. This time he said to me, "Go ahead, kid. Go take the call and make yourself some tips. Do you know how to find apartments?" I said yes. I stood on the milk box to reach the receiver. "Hello?" The operator said, "I have a call for Miss Beverly Cohen at 126 Garwick Street, apartment C43. That meant the C building, 4th floor, 3rd door. I ran to the building, rang the downstairs bell, and yelled while I ran up the stairs, "Beverly Cohen, telephone!" She flew past me before I reached the 4th floor. After Miss Cohen finished her call, she gave me 2 cents. I took another call until the pinboy machine boys came, and then Babe told them I was included in taking turns. The boys told me if somebody gave only a penny, not to call them to the telephone anymore. I went back to playing solitaire with Sugar. "Why do they call you Sugar?" I asked. "Because I'm sweet." "Because he's Meshuggah, crazy," Babe said. "You're Jewish, right? You know that word, Meshuggah? That's his real name, Sugar for short, ha ha ha." "Ask him why he's called Babe. Because of his mentality, ha ha ha." More men came in. Farmer, Mike, and Pee-wee, who was really the biggest. The poker game started up. Farmer said to come sit next to him. Sugar, leaning against the soda cases again, said, "Ask him how he got the name Farmer." because he's saving up for a farm, a horse farm. Go ahead, kid. Bring him luck. He needs it. I got tips out of every pot and extra money when Farmer won. Besides the telephone tips, I went home with full pockets. Every day was the same in the candy store, but new things happened also. When I finished the Shirley Temple coloring book, Mr. Seltzer gave me a book of cut-out fashion dolls and a pair of scissors. One day Nellie came in the rain, and Mr. Seltzer put her newspaper in a paper bag. Once my boyfriend Joey came by while I was on my way back from the grocer, and I treated us both to the moving picture in the Nickelodeon machine before going back inside. You put 2 pennies in the slot, and then you look through the metal peep box while you turn the handle on the side of the machine. The handle flips picture cards over a roller that makes them move just like the movies. You go as fast or slow as you want. I took the first turn. I saw a beautiful hula dancer with very long hair. She had on a grass skirt and a necklace of flowers over her bust, and as she wiggled, her necklace swayed and her thighs split open her grass skirt right up to the waist, and you almost saw all her private parts. Then it was Joey's turn. He giggled and said it was a dirty picture show. I gave him a knuckle punch in the arm and ran back in the candy store. By the end of the week, my treasure box was almost full. I had more than $3.50. My mother took my coins and gave me 4 $1 bills. She said, "It's a tip from me included to give you a good start." On Saturday, after the Cannon Street movies, I went to Clinton Street with my sister Ruthie, and I bought myself black patent leather tap dance shoes with grosgrain ribbons and white lisle socks to go with them. The taps on the shoes were thick and shiny bright, the grosgrain ribbons tied into big bows that didn't come undone. The socks didn't wrinkle and slip under my heels. The shoes and socks together cost only $2.15. I put a dollar bill back in the treasure box, and I put the coins, 85 cents, back in my pocket for spending money. On Sunday, I put on my dazzling new tap shoes and white socks and ran outside to look for my gang. I rounded up Celia, Enola, Phyllis, and Lovey for frankfurters and soda, my treat, at Bellitz's Delicatessen 3 blocks away on Rivington and Cannon Streets. We linked arms 5 across, and for the first time in my life, I was in the middle, clicking the pavement smartly with my tap dance shoes instead of stumbling along at the edge of the curb, taking a shove or a punch from people who would get mad at us for taking up the whole sidewalk and forcing them into the gutter. All the way to Bellitz's, we sang at the top of our lungs the song of the Garrick Street Girls. The song had been passed along from the last Irish girls who moved off our block to the first Jewish girls who moved in. In Jersey City, where I did dwell, a butcher's son I loved so well. He stole my heart away from me, and now he thinks no more of me. He sits the girls upon his knee and tells them things he won't tell me. And now I know the reason why, because they have more gold than I. Gold can vanish and silver can fly, and then they'll be as poor as I, as poor as I. They'll never be till apples grow on the cherry tree. My life in paradise was not to last. One day, a girl from my building ran up to me in the candy store and said, "My mother wants me home." I found her sitting in a chair in the middle of the kitchen with blood splashed all over, down her slip, and a blood-soaked bandage on her head. I dropped to my knees. "Mama!" "Don't worry, it's nothing," she said. "I have a case." Her eyes gleamed and her face lit up with joy. "I have a good case. A lawyer is coming. It could be hundreds." "Mama, what happened? You're bleeding." "Don't worry, I'm all right. The Besters wouldn't even call an ambulance. They sneak me to their own doctor not to make a case. They'll find out who they're dealing with. I will sue them for plenty." "Mama, what did it? Who did it? What happened? Tell me." "Oh, excuse me, I'm all excited. The trays from the automat fell on my head. They tumbled down from the dumbwaiter, and the knives and forks stabbed into my head while I was leaning over to take out a tray. The same thing what happened to the lady before me." I started to cry. No, that's nothing to cry for. It looks worse than it is. I don't even feel it. I'm just waiting to take pictures." She sat upright in the chair as if she were already posing before the camera. "You want something to eat? Go look in the refrigerator." "I'm not hungry." "Nobody has to know what happened. You hear? Bite your tongue. It should stay between you and me and Ruthie. Don't mention to Papa. All right? Oh, do I have a case? At least maybe 300. Soon after, the lawyer came in with a photographer. They took pictures. Then the lawyer went downstairs and phoned for an ambulance. Ma said to me, "Don't worry, you hear? Be good. Go play in your room. Ruthie will come home any minute." The ambulance men came with a stretcher and put a gray blanket over my little mama and took her away. The lawyer and photographer went with them, carrying a paper shopping bag she had prepared in advance for the trip to the hospital. I waited alone in the kitchen, my lips shivering, scared she would bleed to death. When Ruthie finally came home, I rushed at her, bawling. Mama was taken away in an ambulance, bleeding from her head. Before I even started to say what happened, Mama came back in a fresh house dress and a kerchief over her hair, tied at the back of her neck. She told Ruthie the whole story from the beginning, all the while they both bustled about getting supper ready as if nothing happened. I didn't have to wait for my mother in the candy store anymore. She couldn't work at a regular job until after the lawyer had claimed damages. I went anyway, almost every day, until spring lured me away and I gave up the money for the freedom of the street. When I did show up in the store, Babe made the pinball machine boys give me turns on the telephone run. Sugar, Farmer, and all the other guys were always glad to see me, but I didn't sit in with them at the poker games. It's different when you're just visiting. Early next winter, my uncles Max and Zalman came back from the mountains with Eva, Anna, and their children. They got apartments near each other in Brooklyn and started up their old businesses again. People who knew them from the mountains said they had nearly starved, and the bank took back the farm. Aunt Eva came to visit. My mother had a surprise welcome home present for her. The monkey fur, restitched and relined in red satin by Jaime the furrier on my uncle's side of the family. "It's too much," Aunt Eva said, in tears again. "Your mother is an angel," she said. "You have no idea. Did she tell you how she rescued us? My father was in the next room. My mother blinked her eyes and twisted her lips at Eva, which I knew was her signal not to mention it, not to say another word. And I never heard another word about the $300 my mother had said she would get from her case.